This was a tough one. Like many of you, I grew up seeing Bill Cosby on TV. As a young kid, I watched reruns of Picture Pages to Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids. Hell, he was a pop culture icon. I mean, who doesn't forget all them pudding pop commercials?
Gelatin pops, real Jello gelatin.
But it wasn't until the debut of the Cosby Show that Bill Cosby became a main fixture in my household. I would watch the show many times with my mom every week, and I wouldn't miss an episode for years. Still, I have very vivid memories of wonderful moments that happened on that show. Why? Because it was a show that made me feel welcomed and at home. It made me feel comfortable and safe. I didn't really have a father growing up most of my life, and I felt that the Cosby Show really made me understand what it felt like to have a strong father figure in your life. Hell, I wanted to be a part of that family, or perhaps one of the neighbors that would pop in from time to time. That's why when the momentous news broke out in 2014 about the allegations of Cosby raping women, I couldn't, or I should say, wouldn't believe it. I mean, how can America's dad do such things? We need to talk about Cosby asked the same question, and instead of answering it, it gives us insights on his career and accomplishments along with detailed descriptions from several of the women about his off-screen antics, and pretty much lets us decide, can one really separate the art from the artist? Detailing his career from being an athlete turned stand-up comic in the 60s, which led him to be a leading man on the TV show I Spy, we get a sense of how dedicated and eager he was to make an impact not only for himself, but for the black community. See, his role in I Spy was very important because it was the first time you had a chance to see a smart, good-looking, and strong black man on screen, when many audiences were used to seeing Amos and Andy as the main black male representation on TV. Did you know that he was responsible for hiring black stuntmen at a time when white stuntmen in blackface was the norm? This and more is the type of impact that Cosby had in Hollywood that eventually led him to level up his career in stages according to his phases in life. He became an educator and used his celebrity to become more of a teacher of moral values and equality, and he spoke to kids and used his platform to really push education, again in a way that made us feel comfortable and safe. The Cosby Show later showed us the father Cosby, and that's when all of us really saw him as a symbol of family values, morality, and equality, all while supposedly doing what he was doing behind the scenes, using these same tactics that he used to allow us to accept him into our homes every week. It's extremely disturbing when you see the timeline of events that this documentary lays out very well in pinpointing the little breadcrumbs that show the same type of behavior that he would later be accused of. The Spanish Fly jokes in his comedy records, the mentioning of how Spanish Fly works during his interview on the Larry King Show.
We'll still be searching for Spanish Fly.
That's right.
And what was the old story was, if you took a little drop, no, it was on the head of a pin.
And that one infamous episode of The Cosby Show about his special barbecue sauce.
One of my barbecues and they have the sauce. People want to get right home.
Was this all a coincidence? How about him being an OBGYN doctor and having his office in the basement of his home? How can we be blind to see such things? Was it due to the fact that it was a different time and we couldn't fathom such things to be true while the world was more innocent? Or was it thanks to the Hollywood underbelly norm of such things being a bit more acceptable? Again, this documentary lays this all out perfectly, really letting us, the audience, truly get the full picture before asking us what we are to believe and who's to blame. Like many revelations that have come to the forefront in recent years, it appears that Cosby used his fame to really get away with what he did. But was it always known? Hard to believe that all of this was kept secret when you hear the stories of young women always visiting Cosby in his dressing room during tapings of The Cosby Show. Kamau Bell does a really good job with presenting all of his research and putting together his timeline of events and giving us a full story from two sides. From the side of the version of Cosby that we grew up seeing, and the other side that 60+ women got to see behind closed doors. He mentioned several times how difficult it was to talk about this, but it's a discussion that many of us need to have. Why? Because there are still many people who support him, especially with the type of impact that he has had on all of us during his 50-year career. If you ask the black community, many of them also are very torn. and he makes sure to include as many well-known Black community members within his documentary that were willing to talk to him from all walks of life, including experts in women's rights and rape psychology. Even some of the actresses that we saw on The Cosby Show that you may not be aware that were part of the 60+ women who came out. The documentary itself also doesn't really have a definitive end, because during their filming, Cosby, who was found guilty and sentenced to jail, eventually had his case overturned, which led to his release. So what end is there if history is still writing itself around this? The 4-hour-long documentary will be split into 4 episodes on Showtime, and episode 1 will be debuting on January 30th. After watching it all, I realized that there are many questions that still need to be answered, but there are several things that I truly realize more than ever. As a country, we have a disturbing rape culture that spans decades, and when it comes to Hollywood, it's always been a problem that, thanks to recent years, is finally being addressed. As a society, we have an issue with believing accusers of sexual assault, and instead of listening to their stories, we always tend to ask questions as if to put the blame on the accuser versus the accused. Mainly, it's hard to hold such high regards to who we consider to be our heroes in life, and this is the one thing that I struggled with most. I always like to think that people have good hearts, and if they stand for something and represent themselves in a certain way, then they should be seen as such. However, we never truly know a person and what kind of demons they may have within them, or what kind of unusual desires they crave. So is this something we should turn a blind eye on or not know about due to all the good that they have done? We seem to be seeing a lot of these true characters being called out more and more, which is a good thing. But perhaps we should take a step back before we hold such figures in high regards in the first place. Or has our current society forced us to be this skeptical? Again, this is the hardest question that I have to ask myself, and just like this documentary, I still don't have all the answers. If you were to ask me if I myself can separate the art from the artist, I would often say yes. But now this is something I truly have to reconsider, and given how The Cosby Show was such a huge part of my life, I would like to think that what I learned from all the lessons taught is that perhaps I should never watch another episode with the Huxtables ever again. But unfortunately, this is a question that I'm still struggling with at this time. I encourage many of you to find out for yourself and watch this documentary series and ask yourself the very same question. I know for many of you it may be difficult to, but as the title suggests, it's something that we all need to talk about. If you have a chance to catch this documentary, do let me know your thoughts and feelings in the comments section. Thank you so much for watching, and if you like this and you want to see more reviews, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you can be notified every time I post a new video. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.